Okay, so one of the most common failures on the Super Nintendo is the AC power port over here. See, this little dude was molded right into this large plastic port as opposed to being its own thing. And quite often the stress of plugging and unplugging them will break it loose where there's then nothing for the barrel connector to be able to grab onto. So apparently this is a pretty common problem from what I've been reading. So common, in fact, that Old School apparently makes a SNES power port replacement. So what I'm going to do now is graft this new power port. See how it looks. Actually, that is a pretty solid match. In fact, it might be perfect and just not look it because of, well, years and years and years and years of fading. And yeah, but actually look at that, it's even got really nice molded in pieces to show the switch functions and port functions. That's pretty good. So to install this, what we're gonna have to do is remove these soldering leads right here and then pull this whole thing off. There's one more screw that's holding it into place, so I'm gonna have to desolder here and here, remove this, put this guy in, solder it back in, and then replace that screw. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Move the shield, just get that out of the way. Get the screwdriver. So it really only looks to be this screw right here that's actually holding this port in place. There were some other ones that went through this, but none of them actually seem to really hold into it. So hopefully it's just this that I have to remove. Oh yeah, it's definitely loose now. Once I desolder it, it should come right out. And it looks like, ooh, it might, ooh, that's actually kind of weird. There's another thing that's kind of in the way. Oh, actually it looks like it slips on and into place. Wow, okay, this is actually going to be tricky. So it looks like it has to slip in and then push kind of down and in. So getting this aligned may be a little on the difficult side. Should probably take the shield off over here too. Get favorite thing for holding screws, flat beakers. Obviously we've taken this SNES all the way apart, so I've kept all of the screws for the project in some beakers just so they don't get lost. A couple springs too, so I'll put the ones from this part of the project in here. So it looks like we just have a couple of screws to remove to get out this heat shield. I have to make sure we very carefully reassemble this because hopefully this isn't attached permanently with anything. Since it's set up as a heat sink, I'm hoping they just screwed it down. You never know, sometimes there's some goop in there. Looks like just those 4 then gold screws. This will give my soldering iron plenty of time to heat up. So for desoldering this, I'm just going to be using a vacuum suction desoldering tool. Some people prefer to use braid. I like using these things personally. I never have had very good luck with braid. I keep some on hand, but it just never really seems to quite do the job. That one off, and now, oh yeah, that's all right, nice. This comes out really easily. Very cool. That'll make that a lot easier to work. Here's the fully, oh, put it right side up. Here's the fully disassembled Super Nintendo Entertainment System. There's really not much to this. It's kind of crazy how simple this, the designs were from back then. This would be pretty easy to trace out. Okay. See where we're at. I should probably flux this first. Hi, hon. Yeah. took all the shielding off of it so I could get to everything. It's going to be really difficult working around this RF thing because it slides under this, but so I got to kind of like work it in funny. Check out the quality of this replacement piece though. It's very close to the original.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm hoping it'll work well. Yeah. Flux these soldering joints. Make it a little easier to remelt it. There's actually a lot of flux still on the board. It's funny, they must not have alcohol washed these very well. I'm sure Nintendo was cranking these out as quickly as they possibly could, though, at the time.
Yeah. Well, manufacturing techniques in the 90s were not quite as advanced today.
Indeed. Yeah, you can tell where somebody hand set the corners of the chips before this was reflow soldered. Oh, yeah. Damn. Used a lot of solder on this power port. Man, this is the tricky desoldering. I've spent a lot of time desoldering Nixie tubes lately, and it hasn't been this difficult. Oh, maybe. Oh, not quite yet. Man, this is really frustrating. Oh. I'm using a little extra persuasion, maybe a little more than I should have, but it's coming free. Hey, there we go. The bad one is out. So the biggest trick is fitting under this RF adapter port because it actually slides in and under that to install. So it's going to be a little tricky to bend. Yeah, see, it has to slide in below that, but then those pins also have to align. So we're going to kind of have to bend this plate up here just a little bit, I think. Oh, okay, not going to be able to bend that with a toothpick. Have to be very gentle with this because we don't want to damage the RF port. Not that we're ever going to use it again, but I figure if I'm sitting here and fixing the Super Nintendo, I really should keep it as original as I can. That's not going to bend because that little buttress that's in there. Okay, so let's try. Oops, rock the camera. Let's try gently sliding it in from the side. Yes. Okay, it looks like if you start it from this edge, you can work it around. Yeah, it's gonna work. Alright, gotta. Yep. So we're gonna slide it in, align those two pins, and then push it in the rest of the way. Two pins are aligned. Just gotta get it around the AV port now. Under the edge. The RF connector. Boom. There we go. Just got to get the holes to line up. There we are. Perfect. Now all we have to do is resolder these. Make sure to get the holes aligned really nicely beforehand. In fact, I think I'm going to reinstall the shield before I put any of the soldering down, because that way the screws will be aligned and the soldering won't cause any problems with that. It actually fits really good. This is not a bad replacement part at all. And if it fits in the case as well as it's fitting here to the board, I'm going to be very impressed. It looks like they took an original one of these off and made a reverse mold from it, because you can see there's larger ridges, or the text bumps out further than it does on this, which kind of seems to me to be like how those if you've duplicated duplicated something from a mold, you sometimes lose a little bit of the detail, and that's what it's looking like here to me. But otherwise, this is a really nice part. Gotta hand it to the folks over at Old School. Now, they did not send me this. I found it. I just went and bought it. But if I like it, well, you know, I like it. Nobody's paying me for this. All right, just bending it into place a little bit to line the holes. So these pins seem like they were bent at an angle to make it easier to slide that into place. So after you put it into place, it looks like you do have to wiggle it back and forth a little bit to make sure that those two holes there are lined up. And this one over here too, actually. So 3 holes really. Okay, so now that that's in, let's go ahead and put our RF shield back in place. Okay, that's interesting. It has one more screw than it has a hole for. Well, okay. Oh, actually, before I install that, I should put in the one screw on the bottom here. So, those, let's see, this guy, them should go right here. There's the correct screw for there. Okay, that's in. Those holes are all lined really nice. I'm going to go ahead and put the shield back. That's the wrong side. Okay. It's got to fit down between that, so the little screw here goes into this guy to hold the shielding slash heat sink for this transistor. Oh, come on. I hate it when it just doesn't want to align. Alright, now that that's in, we can align the rest of the holes. And put the rest of the shielding back together. And start with this one down here at the corner since it swings left and right. Yep, that puts all the rest of them into alignment. Put that back in. Put these 3 dudes back in. Oh, come on. Again, these just do not want to align right. There we go. And I don't think it's a problem with the part or anything. I think the alignment is just the fact that these screws were, I don't know if the tips are threaded weirdly or what, but it just more feels like the shielding slash heat sink is difficult to screw into. Okay. Looks like it's in place really nice. Those holes are lined up extremely well. Let's put this back on to protect the electronics. That's the other section of heat shield. And let's go ahead then and put those 2 soldering joints in. Should go really fast. Let's see what we want to use for this. Go ahead and use the leaded solder. back while I move this so I don't burn my arm or something. 'Cause that'd be dumb. Just want to get my fume extractor a little bit closer to the project because, well, soldering fumes give me a nasty headache. I always try to use one of these fume extractors. Alright, this should go fast. Heat things and start laying in the solder. There we go. Alright, almost there. That one's good. More solder out. Heat this. Heating. And in goes the solder. And that one looks pretty good. Alright, clean my tip off. Back. Let's have a look-see at these two joints. Those look pretty good to me. Alright. Yeah. And new power port on the Super Nintendo.